Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Name on the Trophy, the Manchester United podcast and YouTube show with me, Dominic Booth. I'm joined once again by Alex Wiley for this episode. I'm still not going to call him my co-host, but I am joined once again by Alex Wiley. You might reach the criteria one day for co-host, Alex, but at the moment I'm sticking with special guest.
Yeah, I'll take special guest, and when you give me the call up,
You'll
I'll
be
take it
ready.
with both hands. I'll be
Just trying to
ready.
impress in training, ready for that a big call up. Today we're going to be discussing three very, very big names potentially on Manchester United's transfer radar in the summer and assessing the possibility of the moves coming to fruition and just generally the players themselves and what they would offer Manchester United. The players are in the title, so I won't keep them from you. Victor Osimhen, Harry Kane, and Jude Bellingham. We're going to start with the striker situation, Alex, very much like we did in one of our first episodes together where we discussed how United might replace Cristiano Ronaldo, where we discussed a few potential targets. These are targets that we know United are looking at in terms of Osimhen and Kane. They're probably the two most elite level strikers potentially on the market this summer. Both would cost United a significant amount of money. Let's get into the meat and bones of it then. What are we thinking of these two players? Obviously, quite different in terms of age profile, but both would be hugely attractive propositions for United to sign. That's for sure.
Yeah, two very good elite players. Two players that play significantly different, and we can get into, as you said, the meat and bones of that. But we're effectively looking at two players who are elite. One is on the wrong side of his age curve, if I'm honest, and the other is on the right side of it. So I guess it's a question of, do we need someone for the here and now? And I think both of those players are good enough for that. And do we care if one of them starts falling off quite quickly? I imagine we do. And then the other question is the style. And to put it bluntly, one player doesn't get on the ball at all, and one player gets on the ball quite a lot. And we've got to ask ourselves, do United need a striker that gets on the ball or not? And I'm interested to see what you think, because yeah, I've got my opinion. I've looked at some of the stats, but I guess I'll throw it over to you. Do we need a striker who gets on the ball?
My opinion on that is yes. I think that United need a striker who drops deep and gets involved in the build-up play. I think that that's what Erik ten Hag wants from his striker. I know we were discussing this actually on the way to the West Ham game, weren't we? All the way back, I can't remember, in the car, about the types of striker that ten Hag has had in his career, especially at Ajax. And the profile a lot of the time was sort of a big number nine in terms of Sebastian Haller and Huntelaar that he had at Ajax as well. I know he's had slightly more sort of false nine types, like Dusan Tadic did really well there for him, and Brian Bobby, I think, last season in the number nine role at Ajax. But it became pretty clear to me when Ten Hag in pre-season and early in this season put Anthony Martial to the forefront of his plans. It became clear to me what kind of striker he wanted there, and even since Martial sort of drifted back into being unavailable because of injury, and even since the Wout Weghorst signing, Weghorst has not played as a number nine who's way up top, and United have been trying to find him. He's dropped really, really quite deep and played as a number 10, played on the right wing at times. And I think Ten Hag wants that rotation of his forwards that you get with a player who will drop deep. So that's why I think of these two options. Harry Kane is the ideal one for me. I know there's massive reservations in terms of age, but obviously when you talk about one striker who doesn't get on the ball and one striker who does of these two, Kane is the one that does. So we know that he's a hybrid number 9, number 10. That's sort of how we can classify him. And the role that he plays for, I think the role particularly that he plays for England with the likes of Sterling, Saka, Rashford, whoever it is, out wide running beyond him, I kind of think that is the perfect template for United with obviously Rashford and the other wingers that we have at the club. I think that would be, even for a 2 or 3 year period, given Kane's age, I think that would be a title winning level of forward line.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you were bringing it back to Ten Hag's first, well, his Ajax team and the strikers he's had, because, and we spoke about it before, the idea that he's had these big number nines, and when you think of that, you think of someone who maybe doesn't get on the ball that much, is more of a target man, someone you ping long balls up to. But I had a quick look at the numbers just to double check that that was correct, and it wasn't. So Haller was getting 27 passes per 90, which I think is like the top 30% roughly. Huntelaar, who we always think of as like a classic number 9, a poacher, even he was playing 25 passes per 90, so still above average. Weghorst, as you spoke about before, 24 passes. Martial, 26 passes. So it's all quite a tight range. But the underlying truth is all these strikers get on the ball a fair bit. There's actually only one striker who's played under Ten Hag who didn't really get on the ball, and that was Kasper Dolberg. Kasper Dolberg only attempted 15 passes per 90, which is like the bottom 20, 30%. And Kasper Dolberg was quite quickly sold on to Nice after about 2 years of Ten Hag's reign. So I think we can safely say that whatever Ten Hag wants, whether it's a big player or a little player, he wants someone who is willing to get on the ball, full stop. I think I'm happy to draw a line in the sand and say that's what he wants.
Yeah.
Osimhen is a fantastic striker, one of the best strikers in world football, as I think you said before. His saber score is 84, potential 86, which is much better than the strikers we currently have. The one caveat, and I mentioned I had a caveat at the start, he barely touches the ball. He makes 14 passes per 90, which puts him in the bottom of 4% for strikers in the top 5 European leagues. So in Osimhen, you have an elite goal scorer. He's quick. He is good with his shot selections. He takes very high likelihood shots of going into the back of the net. Decent in the air, but not someone who gets on the ball. And that is what Harry Kane is. So I agree with you more or less. I think Dolberg might even be the better player right now. He's younger, but does he fit into the United team?
Osimhen, you mean?
Osimhen, sorry, yeah. Osimhen.
Definitely not a better player, Dolberg.
Yeah, Dolberg's fallen off quite a bit recently. But yeah, Osimhen, does he fit into the United team? I'm not sure if he does.
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, you can't ignore a goal record like Osimhen's, can you? 21 in 25 in all competitions this season. He is the absolute figurehead of that Napoli side that's completely running away with Serie A. And there's a huge amount of talk around Osimhen at the moment. I mean, he had to address his future, I think, this week, and he said that it would be an ambition of him to play in the Premier League one day. He's not getting distracted. He wants to concentrate on what he called a beautiful season with Napoli. And certainly that could get even better. They're competing in the sharp end of the Champions League as well at the moment, as well as pretty much wrapping up Serie A already. So he is hot property, and someone, whether it be this summer or the summer after, someone in the Premier League, I would have thought, will land him for a significant fee, probably around the 150 million mark. It's
Maybe.
just whether that's United. I mean, I kind of think he might have Chelsea written all over him because of the fee and how much they will be willing to spend. And he is a guarantee of goals. And maybe that shouldn't be discounted. You know, I know United aren't struggling for goals this season, even without a top recognised number 9. You know, look at what Marcus Rashford is doing, but you add that level of goals into a side, then you start talking about the title, don't you? I mean, Erling Haaland hasn't necessarily fitted in perfectly at Man City, but just look at his goal numbers and look at where City are still challenging for the league and challenging for the big trophies. So do you need devil's advocate maybe, do you need someone who gets on the ball, and do you need someone who gets involved in the play if they're scoring that many goals?
Well, it's interesting you bring up Haaland because I would actually argue backs up my point, because Haaland is for a striker doing exactly what he's meant to do. He's scoring goals galore. His expected goals are through the roof. His actual goal rate's through the roof. City as a team are not scoring significantly more goals this season than they were last season. And really what's happened with City is rather than the goals being spread out across the entire team, it's all being focused through Haaland. And I think that makes City more predictable and also more reliant on one player's form. And what it speaks to is this idea that you need players to fit into a system. You know, it's all well and good. You've got a striker scoring loads of goals, but if you as a team are not scoring any more goals, then the net outcome, is it positive? For City,
it's not that much different.
Yeah, so if you've got someone like Osimhen who's not getting on the ball and scoring a lot of goals, is that going to have a negative impact on Rashford, for example? Because it's easy to think of it as additive, and you just go, "Yeah, well, Rashford is scoring a lot of goals. Then we get Osimhen, he'll score loads of goals. Oh, we're gonna be great for the league." But the truth is, if you've got Osimhen scoring loads of goals and not really bringing anyone else into play, then someone like Rashford's goal numbers could then take quite a big hit. It's complicated. Like football, that side of it is really difficult to work out. I think Harry Kane would probably have a bigger net benefit as a squad, even if his goal numbers might not be as good as someone like Osimhen's were if he were to join.
I mean, Kane's goal numbers aren't bad. Like, we need to probably state that. I don't know. That's not a secret to anyone in world football that Harry Kane scores a lot of goals. I mean, he's just broken Tottenham's all-time record scoring record. England's all-time goal scoring records on the way. I think it's not as if Kane isn't an out-and-out goal scorer. It's just, like we say, what he offers to the side. And I think, was it last season or the season before, where he was basically the Premier League's top assister, 20-odd assists or something like that in a single season. The way that you linked up with Son, you can easily imagine that happening with Rashford. It's a similar kind of dynamic there with Rashford cutting aside, Kane dropping into those sort of half spaces and pulling his markers away for other players to get involved in it. I think that United, what's interesting with Kane is that the one thing that everyone says about him is his age. And that makes me feel very old because me and Harry Kane are almost exactly the same age.
I'm older.
Yeah. Well, you're actually ancient in striking terms. But you have to accept that, and you have to say Kane will turn 30 this summer. Look at Casemiro. United spent top dollar for a 30-year-old player who was the best in his position and who's made a significant impact on the side, revolutionised the side in that key area that United were crying out for. This is almost a carbon copy of that scenario, which is in a different position. Are United once again willing to take the option that the statsmen won't like, signing a player who's not necessarily in his peak years or have market value for the resale, and just say 2 or 3 years of Harry Kane, 100 million, we will take that. That's a price very much worth paying if it wins United a title.
Yeah. So with Casemiro, the downside of the Casemiro deal we haven't seen yet. So I feel uncomfortable pointing to it as saying like, well, this is an example of how it's worked really well. When I think the statsmen or even other people working in recruitment teams, they would say the issue with the Casemiro deal is further on when he's getting to 32, 33, 34, and he's still on big money and he's quickly starting to get worse. That's the negative side of that. So the trade-off is, do those couple of years where he first comes in and is really good, are they worth it? And I guess with Harry Kane, you're sort of asking the same question. What I will say about Harry Kane is he has adapted his game very well for his body. So as he's got slightly slower, I know he's had those ankle issues, you've seen him dropping deeper, not making so many runs off the shoulder, adapting his game to sort of play more to his strengths and what he's good at now. And there's a case to be made that maybe Harry Kane won't fall off as quickly as other players. Look, I always want United to sign players on the younger side who are going to improve, sort of like how Liverpool have done. I want United to do that. Every now and then, bringing in someone who has that experience, especially in a position that we really need, I can see some benefit to it. It's not black and white. But look, yeah, Harry Kane, he scores goals, yes, but his creative numbers, you mentioned his assists last year, his expected assisted goals this year is actually higher relative to other strikers in the top 5 European leagues than his goal rate. So if you actually look at it in terms of that, his progressive passes, his long passing, through balls, crosses, they're all in like the top 5%. His expected goals are in like the top 25%. They're still very good. And then the one other facet of his game that you need a bigger sample to look at, but Harry Kane's finishing is also like it's one of the best players in the world. You won't get that from one season's worth of data. You need to look at a long, like 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons. I've seen analysis that's done that, and Harry Kane is an elite finisher. So I guess to sort of round out quite a big point, the real trade-off is Harry Kane is an elite player. He's adapting to his game. It's just whether in 2 or 3 years' time, are we going to be stuck with a player who has regressed significantly and is on big money and becomes a big problem? I don't know. But I am wary of signing too many old players, too many Casemiros.
Yeah, and United have been here before, particularly with strikers, haven't they? Signing 30-odd-year-old strikers, Cavani, Ronaldo, and then, like you say, they quickly drift downhill, and then it's a slight problem in terms of having them in the squad with big wages and big contracts, and nobody particularly wants to buy them, and there's no market value for them. So I understand that with Kane, and that's maybe will come into the thinking of the United recruitment team. There's also the major caveat in this situation in that Kane may not go anywhere, especially if Spurs get Champions League football, which they do look increasingly likely to do. I think they're probably pole position in terms of that top 4 race at the moment, with Newcastle potentially falling off. I know Liverpool could potentially come back into it, and Spurs aren't wholly convincing to me under Antonio Conte. So there is that. If they don't get Champions League football, there's a conversation to be had about Kane's future. He needs to go somewhere if they don't, and he needs to go somewhere that will be challenging for trophies for his own career. In my view, it's been too long that he's not been part of trophy winning sides for the quality that he has. I think it's a shame for him.
Yeah, his legacy can't be someone who wins nothing. He's been too good for too long to have won so little. So I think, I mean, we're having these conversations before Conte joined, but I think he needs to sort of put sentiment to one side and ask himself how he wants to be remembered. And for me, if I was in his position, let's say I was playing for United, which is the club I support. Let's say I was playing for United and they weren't winning anything. Would I be willing to go to a better club to get some trophies under my belt? I'm probably going to annoy some people, but I would. And I think Harry Kane should as well. He can't finish his career having won zilch.
Yeah, he shouldn't be worried about his Tottenham legacy either, because I think that is set now. He's done everything that he could possibly do for his boyhood club. So it should be a case of now being a little bit selfish. That move to City didn't go through when it really should have done for him. That obviously had a massive knock-on effect in the global striker market, because Haaland then went to City the next year, and Haaland might have ended up somewhere else. Maybe Kane will go to Europe. Maybe that's the way he gets round retaining that Tottenham sort of affection. Goes to somewhere, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, and sort of out of mind for those Tottenham fans. Osimhen seems like just the trajectory that his career has had, that there will be a big move, and he'll have less sort of stigma about going to one of those real elite level clubs. I'm sure he will do, and I'm sure wherever he goes, he'll score a lot of goals, like we said.
Yeah, Napoli are going to finish this season winning Serie A, probably get into the latter stage of the Champions League. I think they're like 3rd or 4th favourites to actually win it. So they could have a fantastic season and then sell Osimhen for a profit, even though they bought him for 70 million or something they got him for. And they're still going to sell him probably for a profit. I mean, almost certainly for a profit. So I don't think there'll be any ill sentiment from the club or the fans if and when he moves on. He's going to go to an elite club in Europe for, as you said, 100+ million, and that's just what's going to happen. The Harry Kane one, I hope for his own sake. I just don't want him to stay at Tottenham and win absolutely nothing. I just think that's so sad.
Yeah, come on,
If I'm
Harry,
honest.
do the decent thing, make us all happy. We'll have to see how it pans out. The other English player that we want to talk about on this podcast, Alex, that could be on the move, another huge transfer saga potentially developing, huge fees involved. Jude Bellingham. This is an interesting one because United have not particularly been in the picture for Jude Bellingham until the last few weeks, when I've seen more reports about their interest in him. Another player who's absolute hot property around Europe at the moment. I mean, the age that he's still at, 19, and the stuff that he's been doing on the global stage at the World Cup and now Dortmund in the Champions League is just ridiculous, really, isn't it? This is a player whose ceiling is so high and who will almost certainly be gracing the biggest and best games for the next decade or more.
Yeah, Jude Bellingham is going to go to an elite club. It's almost more inevitable than the Osman thing we were speaking about before. I hate to be a downer. I just don't see it being United. I know United tried very hard to sign him pre him going to Dortmund.
Yeah.
They had him in the training ground. They had Fergie coming just to meet him, and he still went to Dortmund. And I think, to be brutally honest, that was the correct thing to do. I suspect wherever Jude Bellingham is going to go, it will be a club that are very likely to win trophies. And United aren't quite there yet. I think they're going to have to stump up a lot of money and somehow convince Jude Bellingham it's the right place to come to. I think it's unlikely, but he's a brilliant player.
It seems odd to me. I've seen a lot of talk about Jude Bellingham and Liverpool, which a couple of years ago, even 1 year ago, made perfect sense. Liverpool have been looking for something to add to their midfield for some time now. And, Bellingham obviously is going to get linked with the move back to the Premier League. Seems that any British youngster who does well for a couple of years abroad automatically gets linked back to the Premier League. I think the British press have got this sort of like come home campaign around these young players. You can't stay out there for long. You've got to come back to your roots. It was like the same with Jadon Sancho. It'll be the same with Jamie Bynoe's Gittins in a couple of years, and all these guys. The clubs listed for Bellingham, from a good source in The Athletic, are Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, United, PSG, Real Madrid, and City. Most of those are Premier League clubs. But I just don't quite see the Liverpool thing. I think, especially if they're not in the Champions League next season, I think that the Klopp era is wobbling a touch. I think there could be some change there with the ownership and all those things going on. So that's why maybe United do come into the picture, especially if the stock is as high as it is at the moment with what Ten Hag's doing. At City, I don't see. I don't see him particularly as a Guardiola type player, given that his sort of possession is not his primary purpose. What do you think about all those clubs and where would suit Bellingham?
Well, I think so. When you're speaking about Liverpool and talking about where they're at right now and the likelihood of them winning trophies and things, I always think you don't even need to go to that level. I think you need to just look at the finances and then ask yourself what club will be able to stump up this sort of money. I don't think Liverpool could stump up. Maybe they could get the transfer fee at a push. The salaries involved, I think, would put quite a lot of stress on where the squad's currently at and what key players there are currently earning. The same with Arsenal. I can't see Arsenal being able to afford that. So already you're taking off quite a few clubs off that list. And then there's like the PSGs. Yeah, I think they could. Even Real Madrid in Spain, the financial situation for Real Madrid is better than Barcelona, but it's still not fantastic.
And then Real Madrid will want a marquee star every summer.
Real Madrid will want him, and I wouldn't surprise me if he wants to go there. Yeah. It's just, can they get the money together? Maybe they can. I don't know the full ins and outs. I just know that I know the financial regulations that La Liga has on Real Madrid and Barcelona Barcelona really struggled to get in it, and I think even Real Madrid were a little bit closer than they'd like to be. In terms of style, I think you're right about City. Like Jude Bellingham does a hell of a lot. You know, he's an elite goal scorer from midfield. He's an elite creator from midfield. He's one of the few players I've seen who is in the top 10% for progressing the ball himself and also receiving progressive passes. He's somehow in the top percent for both. He's on both sides of the ball. He's the ultimate ball to box to box player. He could play as an 8, he could play as a 10, he could even play as a 6. I mean, his defensive work rate's pretty outstanding. The one, I'm going to say that word again, caveat that I have is his ability at looking after the ball. So his pass completions are around the 80% mark, which is not bad. It's about average. And given the trade-off of what you're getting in terms of assists and progressing the ball is more than worth it. But if you're a team that really wants to dominate possession, do you want that? And the one other thing I would say is he is in the bottom 3% for miscontrols and the bottom 1% for dispossessions from a centre midfielder. And
Interesting.
That is interesting. I think it's still worth it given how much else he gives you on the pitch and his age as well. I'm sure certain little like kinks to his game could be worked out. But Jude Bellingham is not someone who fully looks after the ball. And at City, who, yes, could afford him, is he going to fit into that sort of team? I'm not sure if he is. Is he going to fit in at United? It depends what we want to do. It comes to that same question we had at the start. Do we want a centre midfielder who looks after the ball and progresses it, like a Frankie de Jong? Or do we want someone who's a bit more, I don't want to say chaotic, but a bit more like willing to try things and will occasionally lose the ball? I don't know. I think Ten Hag probably wants us to be more on the controlling side. I think United fans are probably like it more how it is now, where we don't fully control games from like a ball possession perspective, but we do in terms of like game management, and we're fairly versatile. I don't know.
You can imagine Bellingham being signed. Pretty much his role, if he was signed for United, would be that number 8 role next to Casemiro, with Fernandes ahead of them. Like you say, it doesn't bring you the most control. It isn't that ball progressor that we've spoken about on previous podcasts, like Eriksen does when he plays there. And like you say, Frankie de Jong is a different profile, but it's certainly it would be a robust midfield. It would be a midfield difficult to get past, and that would bully teams. And yeah, you can imagine United looking really, really strong with that lineup. It's just like you say, Ten Hag's philosophy, what Ten Hag wants from his deep lying midfield doesn't really align ideally with that profile. Like it didn't with Casemiro, though. We thought that Frankie de Jong was going to come in and be a real deep lying number 6 who progressed the ball. It ended up United got Casemiro, who was more of a destroying type in there. So that's the rub with Bellingham, whether it's worth United committing so much money to a player who isn't the ideal type of Ten Hag midfielder. Not saying that he wouldn't be really good for United, because the guy's 19, he's absolutely tearing it up for Dortmund. I think he'd be great. But, United probably going to spend money on the striker position, which would take a huge chunk out of their budget. They're kind of going to want a new goalkeeper as well, I think. Whether the funds are there then available for a real high level elite midfielder as well, probably depends on the takeover, who comes in and how much they're willing to spend. So yeah, I think there's a few question marks, not around Bellingham the footballer, but around Bellingham to United the deal. Maybe that is why people think that he will go to Liverpool or he'll go to Real Madrid. Maybe they are the more realistic options. I think, for what it's worth, I think Arsenal might well get Declan Rice, which could potentially disturb the market a little bit. He's a player that United have admired for a long time in that defensive midfield position. Probably slightly off their radar now. Casemiro is in town, but yeah, that's the midfield market. Just like the striker market this summer is going to be so interesting, with so many sort of moving pieces and the domino effect between clubs, which will sort of determine how much business we see.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because once a big sum of money floods into the market, almost like remember when like Neymar signed for PSG, and suddenly there was this large influx of money that was then spilled out from club to club to club. You'd get that with like a Declan Rice going to Arsenal, which should, yeah, it would
The
put
Andy
a lot of
Carroll and
money into the
Fernando
market.
Torres effect, I think it's called as well.
Yeah, not quite as glamorous example of that, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting summer. And with United, a lot of it does depend on the takeover because right now, I don't even know what the Glazers are fully up to. I'm not sure if they actually want a sale, if they just want to sell some of their shares but not a controlling stake. I don't know. It's a difficult one because with Avram Glazer was actually at the cup final, which I thought was a little strange given they're trying to push a sale through. And you hear murmurings that they don't actually want to fully sell the club. A lot of it is going to come down to if they sell and who they sell to. Because if they sell to the Qataris, and let's just be honest, it's the Qatari state that wants to buy the club. Let's just get it out there. I mean, I'm sure you're going to say that's
Yeah, that's according to reports at the moment.
according
Or
to
yeah,
reports. According to reports, but yeah, I think that's the Qatari state wanting to buy United. That's going to be a hell of a lot of money. If Ineos end up getting the deal, it won't be quite as much money, but I think they'll still want to put quite a lot in their first window in charge. So yeah, a lot of it comes down to how much money are we actually going to have. I don't
yeah.
know. I have no
I did
idea.
I did enjoy Harry Maguire completely blanking Avram Glazer at the trophy lift after the Carabao Cup win. That was
Do
possibly the best thing he's done in the United shirt, to be honest.
you think that was
But
intentional?
I don't know. I don't know. I did see Ten Hag later on. Did hug Avram Glazer, didn't they? After or Joe Glazer it was, wasn't it? After the win, and he was there with Fergie and the rest of them. So it's it's one of those with the takeover that I think that they are seeing that United are doing well and can potentially drive up the market price that they could ask for. United are probably in a sort of 5-6 year high, which can only be good for the Glazers. So maybe that is making them change their mind. Or
Yeah.
maybe it's just a little bit of negotiation and gamesmanship within the markets. And yeah, I know United fans all want a sale, and they've been very vocal in the criticism of the Glazers, and even singing it after the Carabao Cup was basically sealed at Wembley. Singing the Glazers out song was quite poignant, I think, or potentially have an effect, and the sale will happen. It'll make the world of difference when it comes to the transfer market, like you say, Alex. That's the key difference. If the Glazers are still around in the summer and there's still some purse strings that are being kept tight, then United fans will feel Ten Hag isn't getting the backing that he's completely deserved.
Yeah. My one it's a bit of a catch-22 because the better United do, the more I'm concerned that the Glazers will be looking at it and thinking, well, we hold out like a couple of years, this could be like a title-winning side, and then the club will sell for even more money. It's like, why can't we have nice things? Why can't United just be good and the Glazers sell? It's so frustrating
Yeah, that
because
would be
United
too
are
much
good
to
in
ask for.
spite of the Glazers right now. Like they're almost like working against the tide for United to still be good despite all the mismanagement, lack of funds, and so on and so forth.
The very fact we're talking about the caliber of players that we've spoken about on this podcast shows United's progress under Ten Hag. A couple of years ago, United were not in the market for this level of player. They just were that slight level below in terms of the players that they could attract in the transfer market. So that that alone is a positive sign, and obviously be even more positive if one of these three that we've spoken about does go to United, which I think one might of the three. I do think that it might be Osimhen, despite what we've all said. I think he might be the most likely of the three to go to United, depending on the Kane situation. Just to wrap up these three players, I don't think United will get Bellingham, however good he would be. Kane could happen, but I think there's a lot of moving parts and questions to that. As we said before, Osimhen will be on the move. United will want an elite striker. That alone makes it the most likely for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to agree. I think Harry Kane will probably stay at Tottenham for at least another year.
You sound so
I
sad about that. It's like you are in personal campaign to get him
well,
out of there.
no, it's more as an England fan, really. You know, Harry Kane is almost our talisman, and it seems so wrong that he's won so little.
Yeah.
It's borderline perverse. It doesn't make any sense.
Shouldn't have
I
put that
do.
penalty over their bar against France, and we might have won the World Cup, eh?
No, yeah, he was responsible for the worst day of last year, but I'll forgive him for that because we've had a lot of good days. But yeah, that's why I'm a little bit emotionally invested in it. I mean, the one thing to say is it's not necessarily the case that he'll come to United and win trophies. Like if I was Harry Kane, I'd maybe think about joining like a Real Madrid or even City, dare I say it, because he's probably more likely to actually win something. But yeah, I can see him staying at Tottenham. I think Bellingham won't come to United because there would be more appealing clubs to him. And I think Osimhen is the most likely. And even though I said I don't see quite how he fits, I'd still be pretty happy because he's an elite striker who is young and he should be able to adapt his game somewhat to the demands of the team. So yeah, I think Osimhen is the most likely. I agree with you there. And if it does happen, then I'm pretty interested to see how that would work, especially with Rashford.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Very interesting indeed. That pretty much wraps up today's podcast there. We hope you've enjoyed this one. It's certainly been a fun one to talk about. We always enjoy talking about transfers on Name on the Trophy, and yeah, it usually gets the most listens and clicks, as is the way with transfer news and football.
Yep. Gets us to those TikTok views.
Exactly. Well, you can keep following Alex and Saber Sports on TikTok, Saber_sports on all the socials. And you can follow Name on the Trophy as well. And please leave us a like and a subscribe on this podcast or on YouTube. I know some of you like to watch us warts and all on the video format, so thanks for that. Alex, we'll be back very soon. Thanks for joining me once more.
Yeah, no problem. Just one more thing before you shut us down. Please trial the app. There's a link to it on all my social media platforms, and there will be a fan version coming out shortly, which will be significantly cheaper than the pro version. I'm actually the price on the pro version is probably putting a few people off. So please try the fan app when it comes out. Thank you.
You can get that level of detail. We just scratched the surface off on the pod. You can really get into the teeth of it.
You can find the next up and coming players before anybody else knows about them, which is quite a nice feeling.
Good stuff. Cool. We'll wrap it up there. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back again very, very soon on Name on the Trophy.